I think like the more you can diminish your ego, the better the result's going to be. Like, I think the ego monster just like fucking devours us all for 10 seconds of like really fleeting gratification that somehow like this was all me, as opposed to yeah, just being open to whether it's collaboration or input or sharing or and also being open to like if you can help someone else too, just like do it. Like their success, like if you're good. I think this is a David Cross quote or John Ennis, also from Mr. Show, but like something of like, there's room for everyone who's good.
Welcome to Inside the Audition, the podcast where we go behind the scenes for a deep dive look into the world of auditions. I'm Joe Lars Larsen, creator of Actors Audition Club, an international community helping actors book your dream roles in TV, film, and theater.
And I'm Brandon Knox, actor, producer, and co-host. Each episode, we chat with actors and industry professionals to share their audition experiences, insights, and advice.
We provide actors with actionable tips, strategies, and resources to help you elevate your auditions.
We demystify the often intimidating and misunderstood world of auditions to help you succeed.
So whether you're just starting out on your acting journey or you're a seasoned pro, join our Actors Audition Club members as we go
Inside the Audition.
Hey! Here we are, Inside the Audition, episode 159. I'm Joey Freddy Larsen. Right, I did this way, but it's this way. Right here, we got Brandon J. Knox. Brandon, how are you?
Me? Hello. I'm good.
Good to see you.
It's good to see you.
We have
what have you been up to?
What have I been up to?
Yeah.
I don't know. Auditions, shows, classes, all kinds of fun stuff. Never mind me, though. We got a fantastic guest. But before we get to the guest, I want to talk about you because you are fresh off a callback from a self-tape that we did together on Monday. And you just had the callback earlier today in person. How'd that go?
It was great. I had the directors laughing. I did a nice vocal warm-up this morning using one of my many straws that I now steal from Tim Hortons. Doing some floor work and getting into the zone and creating that relaxation, which will lead to some concentration, which frees my imagination. You know what? I actually ran into a friend of yours and a friend of the studio's, Lars.
Who's that?
I ran into Eric Andrews.
Ooh, I love Eric Andrews.
It was so much fun.
We're
just sitting there joking around for like 10 minutes before he goes in to do his audition. And it was great. It was so much fun to see Eric. And it was interesting doing an in-person audition. The director was over Zoom, which I found interesting. But you know what? It was a fun experience. I got them laughing in the room, and it was a lot of fun. So you do your prep and you let it go.
Here you go. Yeah. Which can you say what spot it was for? On the down low.
I'm gonna keep that. I'm gonna keep that close to the vest right now.
Save it for the grand reveal when you book it.
Yeah.
But congrats.
Thank
Callback is great. That's the zone that you want to be in on a regular basis.
Yep.
And the nice thing, as a union member, you'll get your $50 callback check coming your way. So
I'm very excited about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, congrats. Keep us posted. On episode 160, we can hear about the booking.
We'll see.
There you go. All right. It's time to bring on our guest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a treat for you. Our guest today has had about a decade, at least a decade-long prolific career as a comedy writer. He's written for the Canadian famous show This Hour Has 22 Minutes as a sketch writer, also The Beaverton, which is another Canadian sketch show, and he's written for Just for Laughs, including being a joke writer for some incredible comedians. You might have heard their names, such as Norm Macdonald, Hassan Minaj, Michael Che, Anthony Jeselnik, Jim Gaffigan, Russell Peters, Seth Rogen, Jeff Goldblum, Howie Mandel, Wanda Sykes, and Sir Patrick Stewart himself. So he's had an incredible writing career. Recently has also made the transition to do more stuff on camera as an actor. And he's one of our newest members here at Actors Audition Club. It's going to be a lot of fun. No pressure, Patrick. Please make some noise. Welcome him to the studio, Patrick Dussault. There he is.
Hello. Oh my gosh! Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
All for you.
Did you hear those
All for you.
applause? One more time for Patrick, everybody. One more time.
Oh, good. This is a hot crowd. Wow.
It's a lot of people we pack in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, nice to see you.
Nice to see you guys. You had me at $50 audition checks.
Yeah, right.
It's a nice mint in your mailbox, you know.
Yeah,
It is.
It's a weird metaphor. It's not
Pile those together. Maybe 2 callbacks in 2 weeks, and you get $100.
Oh
There you
my
go.
goodness. Free
There you
money.
go. Free money.
Free money.
free money.
All you
well,
have to do is work really hard on it.
Yeah. Spend hours and hours of prep. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, welcome, Patrick. We're
It's lovely
excited
to be
have
here.
you. It's gonna be great. Let's just jump right into it. Our first segment is a little something called 1 minute life story. Brandon is going to throw a 60-second timer on the clock, and you're going to tell everyone the life and times of Patrick Dussault, starting from conception to now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 1 minute life story of Patrick Dussault, starting now.
I was conceived during what I have to assume was very tender, passionate, and satisfying lovemaking from my wonderful parents, who are still married to this day. I was born and raised in Montreal. I grew up my whole life there. I played a lot of sports growing up, a lot of hockey, a lot of baseball, a lot of tennis. Was always a comedy nerd. I mean, that wasn't really a term that we had back then, but just loved devouring it from like 7 or 8 years old on. But never occurred to me that was a thing that I could do. And went away to school, studied philosophy, graduated, found out that the ancient Greece job market had dried up. So I waited a lot of tables and I attended a lot of bar. And at one of those places, I just started working with a lot of people that were actors and writers and directors. And one of them had a comedy troupe. And I always loved Saturday Night Live. He asked if I want to start writing sketches, and I did, and something clicked, and I loved it. And so I've been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. And yeah, in the last 5-ish years, maybe a little less, I've been acting, which has been a fun little journey. I've got a lovely wife. I've got 3 babies who are not babies anymore. They're enormous teenagers. And I think, do I have any spare time that I can donate to someone else's life story?
No, you're way over time.
Oh, I'm way over. Okay, that's my brand. That's my comedic brand.
Ding, 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 ding. That was Patrick Dussault's 1.5 minute life story.
Oh, I took half a minute from someone else's life story. That's not
Yeah. Well, you'll be penalized in the podcast score system that we've got going on here.
Yeah.
You know what you do is you lock those 30 seconds off like the end of my life. Like I'm okay checking out of this earth.
Okay.
I mean, it's going to bite me in the ass. There's probably going to be like the meaning of life within those other 30 seconds. But
Right. Yeah. You'll say to your kids and grandkids, just 1 second before I go, the secret to life is.
Yeah. And then I'm gone. And they'll know it's because Daddy gave a rambling self-biography on a podcast in Toronto.
C'est la vie. That's a lesson
I
right there.
I don't see any other recourse that I could have done.
Love it. Can you tell us, and you talked about meeting some actors and comedians and getting into sketch, but how did you really get into writing for things like Just for Laughs, The Beaverton, This Hour is 22 Minutes? Like what came first? I want to talk about that because you're unique in that I think you've spent more time as a comedy writer than as a comedy actor, and we haven't had too many writers on the show.
Yeah. The two are sort of intertwined. Like I always liked writing as a kid in high school. I'm from Quebec, so we have what's called CEGEP, which is sort of, it's an acronym. It's like kind of like almost like a mandatory junior college you do between 11th grade, which is when high school ends in Quebec, and then going off to university. And I got into writing then, mostly like short stories and stuff. And, you know, I was just like any other hard partying dickhead through university. So I didn't necessarily focus on that. But I remember graduating, and like the only thing that sort of seemed appealing, I was like figuring things out, but I always loved writing. And I wrote like the kind of really shitty, indulgent short fiction that only like a 22-year-old that hasn't done any living could write. And I was waiting tables and working as a bartender. And I worked at this one place in downtown Montreal. It's called Mexicali Rosas. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was just like this hub of comedians and actors and musicians. And I hit it off with this one guy named Sean, and he had a comedy troupe with a terrible name. It was called the Bionic Yahoos. Sean, I'm very sorry, because I love you and your troupe are all very funny, but it's a very late 90s, early 2000s kind of name. But I went home and I started writing a sketch that night, and it was like, you know, like in a movie when somebody does drugs for the first time and like their pupils get really small and they do like a 360 around their head and like Sunshine of Your Love is playing. Like it was a very that moment of like, oh, fuck, like this is what I want to do. And I was always obsessed with Saturday Night Live and Mr. Show and Kids in the Hall and all of that stuff, but especially Saturday Night Live. And so basically, like, I just started pouring myself, and I used to have like the oral history of Saturday Night Live. I still have it, but I used to keep it in my bathroom. And it's the reason why to this day I sit down to pee, because I would just always have an excuse to read a few passages, and I loved it. And so I just like threw myself into writing sketches, and it so happened after, I think that same summer, during Just for Laughs, that Seth Meyers was in town. And this was probably like his second year on the show. And I guess he was doing sets there. And I saw him, I was living in the McGill ghetto at the time, and he was walking up Park Avenue in Montreal. And I saw him and I recognized him immediately. And I just like kind of like ran through oncoming traffic. And if you know Montreal at all, Park Avenue is a very busy street. So it's like a real Frogger situation. And I just like hounded him for 20 minutes with questions about Saturday Night Live and how can I write for it? How do I get on the show? And he could not have been like a nicer guy. Like he really walked me through all of it. But he kind of turned me on to improv, because at the end he was saying, you know, we don't really hire straight up writers so much as we look for writer performers, and told me about Second City, which I was obviously aware of from SCTV, but it sort of set me on that path. And I ended up moving to Toronto, taking improv classes. I had a sketch troupe, and I would do a monthly sketch show. First, we used to do it at the Rhino in Parkdale, and then we got a residence at the Drake Hotel when it had just opened. So I was doing that, but like nothing professional, just kind of banging it out. And I'd do some commercials to make money. I actually made the most money one year was just being an extra on Queer as Folk when it used to shoot here in Toronto, because you could make like $20 an hour being an extra, and you just shoot long overnight scenes. So, you know, we do 8 hours. I must have been a bystander at like countless hate crimes and vigils that took place on the show. But you'd go for, 6-8 hours, you'd make your money. And anyways, fast forward about 5 years, I guess. I'd been doing my thing. And I moved to Vancouver for a while to follow a girl who is now my wife, and then moved back to Montreal when we had kids originally. And I was very, very immersed in the improv community, because like that part had taken from Second City. And so I was in this improv company in Montreal. We did this weekly show, and we had this like wonderful community of funny people, but I wasn't making money. And I had a very good friend of mine. His name is Nick Brazow, and he's this really funny stand-up comedian. But he decided he took a job in the programming department at Just for Laughs. He's now like their head of programming. He's the guy now. But this was I guess 2011. And we were going to go to South by Southwest together. And we thought we could just get down to Austin and bullshit our way in. And if you know South by, you can't do that at all. And so he was going with Just for Laughs. And he said, we have an extra pass, but it's only for people who work here. But we need, there's an opening in the we need a copywriter. And I said to myself, internally, like, okay, well, it's not really what I want to do, but it's close to what I want to do. And maybe that's progress. And also, I really want to go to this festival. So I took the job. And I went down to Austin with my friend, and I lucked out because that's where I met Bruce Hills, who's the CEO of Just for Laughs, and he's a really fun dude. And he just was down. He likes going to concerts, and so do I. And we sort of hit it off. And I made my ambitions known to him that I want to be a comedy writer. But then I just kind of shut the fuck up and did the job that I was hired to do to the best of my ability, and it worked out. And they ended up. Halfway that summer, that would be 2012, Bob Saget was hosting what was called, it was the 30th anniversary of Just for Laughs that year. So it was Just for Laughs XXX. So it was just like, like a dirty kind of gala. It was hosted by Bob Saget. And Triumph, the insult comic dog, was Robert Smigel was doing a set.
Nice.
And I think it was just, I guess, like whoever was writing on it, I guess some hosts just weren't feeling the material that they were being given from the writers that they had. And so they just gave me a shot. They're like, hey, you want to be a writer? Like, show us what you got. So I wrote like a handful of jokes for Bob and for Triumph. And I truly don't even know what got used or not, but I guess it pleased them enough that they asked me to come back the next year. They created a job where I do TV development in the winter. And then I started writing galas in the summers. And so, it started with doing, it was my first one was Jay Baruchel and Seth Meyers. And so the Seth Meyers part, I was like, this is exactly 10 years after I had met him, And in my head, this is like this romantic, very full circle moment where he'll remember our conversation and this journey. And now we're here and I'm going to write you these great jokes and, you'll whisk me away to New York or I don't know what. And it was the complete opposite in that he was super nice, but like myself and I think it was, it's this guy, Kevin White, who's the showrunner now on Kim's Convenience and Strays or whatever it's called now. But he and I were writing. We'd written a bunch of jokes for Seth. And Seth comes, I think, day of the show with his main writer, this guy, Alex Bays, who, head writer at Late Night and a Closer Look and like a genius, right? And they took our jokes and, thank you very much. And then they kind of went into Seth's dressing room and in like 45 minutes wrote like a complete monologue that was just like light years better than anything that we'd written, and at that point I wasn't even going to mention the chat or anything. It was a very tail between my legs, but also a great example of what we study now with Tom, right? With the 4 agreements of just like, don't take anything personally because it's the job. But yeah, from there, I had a great time with Baruchel, got to write, that show with him and he was a lovely guy. And then from there, it just set off a nice little 10-year run of writing a lot of galas with a lot of some of those great hosts that you talked about. And it's just some of the best comedy experiences of my life. It's like my comedy high school. It's where I really learned how to write for TV, producing television. It was just great, and you meet your heroes for better and for worse. So that's good. And eventually too, Montreal is not, I'm not funny in French is what it comes down to. And the work was all outside of Quebec. And so I, through Just for Laughs, I'd written a TV special hosted by Mark Critch, and Mark got me hired over at 22 Minutes, which was great. And I did that for a season. And I had been writing articles for the Beaverton's website. And then I'd heard rumblings that they were going to get a show. And so, I went and I wrote on that show for a couple of years too, with some very funny people. And, it's the TV grind, right? You're just sort of gig to gig. We do a Winnipeg Comedy Festival, same thing. But as far as how it gets started, I wish I could say that there's like a formula. I guess you can write a packet and submit, but I think it's just like that weird combination of you're writing the kind of stuff that you want to be doing. And I think you're just consuming it. You're watching the stuff you like. You're trying to figure out what you think is funny. You're writing your own material. You're fucking around with friends and peers and stuff. And I think it's just you're chasing down every lead. I think the only piece of advice I guess that I could give is to just not be above anything, in the sense, like I remember when I was younger starting out and I said to myself, well, I just want to be a television writer, and that's all I want to do. And so, and I would say no to like being a production assistant or, like all those jobs that were sort of adjacent to what I wanted to do, because I was just very tunnel vision of like, no, if I want to do this is the only thing I should be doing. And honestly, it was only when I opened myself to like any foot in the door will do that things kind of got better.
Right.
I was so much talking.
No, that was great. That was great, and that's great advice.
Right.
We often talk about that too. Is like, yeah, can you be on a crew? Can you be on production? Can you work at a casting site? Like whatever it is. Versus sometimes people do think, oh, I only got to do this one thing, and I got to suffer and starve until I get my big break. Meanwhile, you're missing your little break every day by saying no to these things. So I think that's great advice. Say yes to a lot early on. Keep working. Be a good human being. Ideally, is probably a good
being a solid
strategy
helps, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any of those is I don't know if you're the type of person where you would get kind of starstruck or have that pinch me moment of like, I can't fucking believe I'm in a room alone with this guy writing jokes for this. Like you mentioned meeting some of your heroes. Anyone in particular that were more of a mind blowing moment for you? Like, I can't believe I'm doing this.
Absolutely. I fucked it up with Mike Judge big time. I didn't write for Mike. I've never written for Mike. I really admire him. King of the Hill is probably my favorite show of all time. And also love, like Office Space and Beavis and Butthead and Silicon Valley and Idiocracy. Like I just find he is the best combination of premise and character driven comedy, which to me is like that's the goal, right? So it was the year that I was writing for Norm Macdonald, which is obviously its own thing too, right? But I think the difference was because I was working for Norm or writing for Norm. And that was the relationship entry point. Like it was an easier in, I guess. And also he was just like the most supportive, lovely guy. He and his main writer, this guy, Ross Abrash, who's become a dear friend. But so working with them, and they were so supportive and they were so great. And we were probably working for 2-3 weeks, which was also rare for Just for Laughs hosts to be that invested that early on. But anyways, it's probably a couple days before Norm's going to go up and do his show, but we've been working together and hanging out now for probably 3 weeks. They've been so good to me. And we're at Place des Arts in Montreal, and Mike Judge is there. I think he must have been getting like an award Just for Laughs or doing a panel, but he's hanging out. And I just said like, holy shit, like that's Mike Judge. And Norm, like, I'll introduce you. And Norm like introduced me to Mike Judge, like as the guy writing jokes for him and doing a good job. Like it could not have been set up more as like I don't want to say like a made guy, but like really legitimized, right? But I was just so fucking starstruck that I was like tongue tied and he's like, it's nice to meet you. And I was like, oh, hey man, what I want to say, like that kind of a thing.
Right.
And then the only other one I can think of, and I don't remember what show it was, but I had written on a show on a Just for Laughs show, and John Mulaney was a comic on it. And I was a fan. It's like sort of before like the internet got into like a profoundly unhealthy relationship with him. But like in those days of SNL where you knew who he was, right? And so he had done a killer set and we were sitting together. They had these wonderful parties at the Hyatt in Montreal after the shows. And it's like everyone that's funny in the world is there. It's like your most romantic notions, right?
Yeah.
But so I'm sitting and I'm having a drink and I'm talking to a friend and John Mulaney's next to me and it occurs to me. So now I'm just thinking like, what's like a pithy, organic way to, initiate conversation or whatever. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I'll just say hi. And as I turn to finally say hi, I've bumped into him. I drop my drink. I had like a vodka soda and it just shatters like glass right at his feet. The drink's all over him kind of thing. And I'm just like, all right, what can I do? And I'm like, Opa. And he just looks at me with like contempt and disgust and walked away, which like I would too if some asshole broke a glass at my feet and then like made a lame like Opa joke, Those would be
Not
Oh,
hack
and then
at
I just
all.
maybe one time, the first time I met Howie, we're sitting at a writer's table and we're just sort of killing time waiting for like I think approval and a joke. And my birthday is November 28th and his is November 29th. And I was like, oh, hey, Howie, like November 29th birthday, right? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, November 28th. And he's like, so the fuck what? Those are different days.
So close. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm moment or something from Seinfeld. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Or like when you like, I'm heading to Italy. Oh, I was just in Greece last year. And you're like, okay, that's a different country, but
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
There's some shows where the writers, or like you're writing a monologue or sketches or whatever, like I'm talking about Just for Laughs, and you're like fully writing material for the host, and then and that's usually either they're like not stand-ups, like they're like celebrities, actors, or they're stand-ups and they don't want to burn their own material because they won't have the TV rights to it, so why not have writers write a new set? So, but then sometimes a comedian's just going to do their set, and you're writing intros for the other acts that are coming out. And those intros have to be, TV caliber jokes because they're going to be on TV. And so one year, I think like Bill Burr was going to host a gala, and Bill's just going to do his own set, obviously. And I got assigned with writing intros, right? And so in my head, I'm like, fuck, it's Bill Burr. Like, I really want to bring it and impress him. And so I like worked hard to make them good jokes. And you got to write like 3 options for every comic. And, so that's like 7 comics on a gala. You're like 20, you got to write 20, TV worthy jokes. And I put some work into it. And so, I want to impress Bill Burr. And then, so there's like, you do like a sound check earlier in the day just to go through blocking for the camera. And that's where they usually go through your script. So he's there and I'm waiting with my intros, and Bill finally comes and he's just like, yeah, look, no disrespect, I'm not going to do any of fucking jokes. And fair enough, he's just like, I don't want to make fun of these guys. Like it's their TV set. Like, I just want to say that they're a killer and introduce them, which in my mind is like the sweetest, like nice thing to do. And like truly like a comic thinking of what other comics want. So like, I get it.
Tee them up.
I just love, like, it was just like the musicality of like, yeah, no disrespect, I'm not going to do any of fucking jokes is just a nice piece of music that I love.
Great. You should put that on your press kit as a quote, like testimonials.
No, I'm not going to do any of his fucking jokes.
I'm not going to do any of his fucking jokes.
Nor should he. His jokes are perfect.
Yeah, he seems to be doing okay. Seems like
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't need me. That's for fucking sure.
I have a question, more writing questions for any of our listeners, viewers who want to get into that realm. What do you feel they need to put together? Like, I guess in terms of a packet, and I know there might be differences if you're a sitcom versus writing jokes for Just for Laughs or writing like a late night type monologue jokes. But what's the core thing that someone would need to get together in a pitch package or to market themselves or to get the foot in the door?
I would say the first thing, like if you're just starting out, probably the most useful thing is to write your own pilot. And it used to be writing a spec script, like pick an existing show and write an episode of that. I would say over the last like 10 plus years, it's been more like if you want to get like a lit agent, let's say, usually they want to see an original spec because it shows both that you've got writing chops, but then it's also maybe something that they can sell. Right. Also, you don't want to spec an existing show also because sometimes maybe they don't want to be told how to write their own show or so an original spec script, which is to say a speculative script, write your own half-hour pilot is a good one. If you're talking about packets for shows, usually most shows have their own packet requirements. Like I know that the Beaverton, I couldn't tell you because I think for the Beaverton, it was like I had my work for the website and maybe 22 minutes. Like the show itself was like a new show, so it didn't maybe have an existing format to send a packet, or at least not in the first season. But for 22 minutes, it's you got to do 12 what they call copy jokes. So it's like headline, punchline stuff in the news. And then they want to see 2 recurring sketches, like stuff that they do to show that you can write in the voice of that, and then 2 original sketches. And, I've written packets for different US late night shows, usually ones that were like getting a pilot order, but usually they'll want to hear, could be segment ideas. I think monologue jokes always. And I would say in that if you're going to write a monologue packet, which is good, you want to keep your jokes evergreen, which is to say like not too topical, like you don't want to talk about drama finding a speaker of the house because like no one's really going to remember that in 3 months, but if you want to like sort of more broad topicality, like you can be political, you can make references to people, but just stuff that will sort of maybe be as relevant and funny in October as it will in April kind of thing.
Right. Right. Like if they don't read it until later or then you just have to rewrite a new packet. 6 months from now if you don't have them evergreen, you mean?
Yeah. And also it's worth finding out, like, if there's a show that you really want to write for, it's worth finding out if they have a packet or if there's requirements, you know, and I think that either requires detective work or someone younger than I probably knows more about the internet, about places you can look, but know what the packet is, only because I got, you know, through serendipity, I think this was about 2010, a former producer at Saturday Night Live that I had met socially, you know, was encouraged me to submit, right? And so she put me in touch and said, here's the, you know, with their submissions coordinator, and said, this is who to go, you know, submit your packet. Oh, not packet, just submit your sample. And there is an SNL packet, which I didn't know. And this was early in my writing career. This is before, honestly, Just for Laughs, before any of those other shows. And I wish I'd known, because I sent Saturday Night Live 110-page screenplay, three episodes of a web series, 3 web series episodes, each like I think about 12 pages. No joke, like 15 sketches, like probably like 100-200 pages of material. And if I got that on that end, now knowing what I know, I would just take it, like, that to me would just be like, right in the shredder, or just like scrap paper. No one wants to fucking read that much. Nobody wants to read more than like 2 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, this guy expects me to read 200 pages. Okay.
Yeah, and that's just like, you know, and I think that's also like the lack of confidence in a choice. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, oh, I want to put my best foot forward. Well, this is good. Oh, but then they really got, like, it's
right.
Just make a choice and sort of live with it. You know what I mean? And also, you know, don't live or die with whether it happens, because I'm a big baseball guy, a baseball fan, and I play a lot of baseball. And the thing I love about it in terms of show business is it really teaches you the gift of failure and rejection, because, you know, as long as you got the thick skin for the nose, then you're fine. And that applies just as much to writing as acting. So, you know, and I'm sorry, that seems tangential, but what I mean is just whatever you're going to submit, don't throw the whole kitchen sink. Pick something you feel is reflective of you.
Right.
Knowing that, you know, it might hit, it might not, but also just that, like, you not getting whatever particular thing you're going up for is not a referendum on whether or not you're good enough to do this broadly, and it's not the only shot you're going to get. You know, it's you're going to find what's for you will never go past you, is a saying in my family, and I think that's right. As long as you're taking your shots, you know, you'll slot in somewhere.
That's great advice. I want to get back quickly to a pilot episode. What would you say? What would your advice to be like? What does a pilot episode need to include, or what do you need to make sure you're demonstrating in it? Like, what's your top 3 or top 5 advice for a pilot spec?
Read. I mean, first of all, read a couple of books. They're not TV writing books, but, you know, books like Save the Cat or Screenplay, or just like understanding narrative structure is a great one to start. You know what? I'll find a link for you later that you can share with people. But there's this website. It's a Channel 101, which is from New York. But before Community, Dan Harmon used to be involved with them, and he's got these great story wheels that sort of break down the structure of a sitcom, which is very, very similar to a screenplay. Just that usually in a movie, the story ends with the characters are changed by their experiences, whereas usually in a sitcom, you want to reset back to the status quo. But other than that, they're very similar. I would say read, and this is not hard to do, you know, find scripts online of shows, like the pilots of shows that you really like. Read those. A pilot, and then also, you know, there's 2 kinds of pilots. There's what they call premise pilots and typical episode pilots. And in both cases, a pilot episode that you're writing is you're setting up the series. So you're introducing the main characters of the show, and whatever their storylines are should be emblematic of like what their core struggle or goal is as characters, right? And that'll manifest itself differently throughout, you know, episodes and seasons. But you want it's basically like it's your thesis statement for the whole series is your pilot episode. It's your setup in that way. And so you've got, sometimes premise pilots are how we got to this point, you know, it's a weird, because I'm not really a fan of this show, but I would say like Friends is an example of more of a premise pilot, where that first episode is like, you see how Rachel joins the gang, and you know what I mean, like, and now we're all in this living situation and going forward. Whereas a show I love, like It's Always Sunny, for example, their pilot episode, you're just jumping right into a typical adventure that the gang would have. And it so happens that in setting that up, you're still setting up your core characters and sort of what they're about and what their essential wants are. But you're just doing it in a way that feels like you're just sort of joining them in progress.
Beautiful. Thank you. Welcome to Patrick Dussault's writing masterclass, everyone. No, this is great advice, and we haven't really had someone who's spent as much time in comedy writing as you on the show, so I wanted to get some of those questions out. Let's talk about when you made the transition to, hey, maybe I can be on camera and not just write the words. How did that happen?
Slowly and then very suddenly. The slow answer is that I always loved performing sketch comedy and improv coming up, you know, and had a lot of stage time, but I was I don't know, I was just insecure about my acting. I'd like to think like a pretty capable improviser, and you know, I sort of know my moves in sketch comedy, but real acting just seemed like this separate thing. And I think I made a choice early on where I was like, you know, it's so hard to make it as just one thing, let alone two. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on writing. And at the same time, you know, acting was sort of always a little hip pocket. You know, when I was living out in Vancouver, you know, I'd do commercials, or, you know, on shows, whether it was at 22 or on Beaverton, you know, maybe I'd do like a little guest spot in some bit or whatever. And in my improv community in Montreal, you know, when people were making web series or short films or whatever, I'd often act in those. But I don't know, I just thought it was like a bit of a nice bonus than anything else, and was focusing on writing. And then during a bit of a slow period, I would say in 2018, 19, just kind of a tricky time in my life and in work. And I was playing baseball. Actually, this was in the winter. I was playing indoor, like, dome softball, and with a bunch of actors. And one of them was good friends with Steve Mann, the casting director. And so Steve and I just kind of hit it off at a house party, and we started talking. And my younger sister is a producer in commercials. She lives in Stockholm now, but she still lives in Toronto. And so Steve recognized, I guess, the last name, and we started talking and trading stories. And when he'd heard that I had a background in improv and sketch, he was just like, you know, you had an interesting look. You know, why don't you just come in if things are slow? Come in, you know, fuck around, see what happens. And I got really lucky. So I came in and I booked 2 commercials, like the first 2 auditions I did, and I booked both of them. And one was a national spot for Frigidaire, and the other one, and this is amazing, was it was a Quebec spot for Cadillac. And so the Frigidaire spot, it was in English, we shot it was a lovely experience, you know. And then Cadillac I did, and I'd audition in English and in French. And when I am fluently bilingual, but English is my mother tongue. You know, in Quebec, I'm an Anglophone, a bilingual Anglophone. But when I speak French in Toronto, everybody here, where they were like, oh my God, like, is that your native tongue? Like, it's perfect, you know?
Right.
And so I shot this commercial in French. And of course, what ended up happening is, you know, they sent the footage back to Quebec, and for sure, the first French Canadian that saw it, they're like, oh yeah, look, the Anglo can speak French. But like, if you are a Francophone, no matter how unaccented my French may seem to non-Francophone speakers, like a Francophone knows right away, right? So they redubbed my voice. And at the time, I weighed about 50 pounds more. So I was a big guy. And it was just like a little voice like this to dub me over, which was amazing. And it played a lot during commercials during the Canadians games. So like the chances of my friends and family seeing it were like 100%. And so that went well. And then Steve kind of encouraged me to sign with his sister Marla, who's my agent. And yeah, you know, it just initially started as just this nice side hustle that was kind of filling in the gaps in between sort of, lulls in writing. And then right before my 40th birthday, this would be September of 2019, or August. The origin is in August of 2019, I played competitive baseball in the summer, like hardball. And I hit this ball right to the outfield wall. And I got thrown out so comfortably at second base because I was carrying a little too much weight. And I knew that 40 was around the corner. So I was like, okay, I shit or get off the pot. So I got into really good shape and I lost like 50 pounds. And all of a sudden I started booking like a lot of ads as a result. And then that was going well. And then what really changed things for me was in February of 2020, just before the pandemic like really hit, I got cast as the Sportsnet Now guy, like in the Sportsnet Now commercials. And it was just this really lovely fit of like the character and the comedy that they were looking for was sort of in the wheelhouse of like what I love, of just like sort of, like I love a confident idiot or a brash, high status buffoon. Right. And it sort of fit that, and it was within the world of sports, and the creative team in-house at Sportsnet was just like these lovely guys, and we just kind of really meshed well. And so I think we shot like 40 spots in a week. And then we wrapped, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and we all went into lockdown. And the idea was that those spots were going to premiere on opening day with the Jays and just become their big marketing push. So when sports got slowed, we all went into lockdown. And I didn't really think much about it. And then I guess in July of 2020, the baseball season started. They started getting pro sports going. And all of a sudden, these Sportsnet commercials were on TV. And not just on Sportsnet, but I guess like on Rogers Network, everywhere. They're on TV like every 5 minutes. No joke. And it was like all of a sudden I was super visible. And we ended up doing 2 more campaigns. Like it ended up being like a 3-year gig. And wow. And what was great was they let me improvise because they were a little dry, the scripts in the first batch, and they knew my background. So they were just like, just have fun and improvise. And they let me do that a bit just to put jokes in. And then for the second 2 campaigns, they were like, well, why don't you write them and be in them? And I co-wrote them with this really talented guy named Hilding Nana Pergasm over at Rogers. And it was just like the funnest job. And then from there, just like momentum kind of picked up. I did like a lot of commercial spots. Like something, I think I had a good run there where I think I did like 14 commercials in about 2 years. Wow. And it was really good. But a lot of those were non-union. And then I went union and was still doing some commercials, but then also all of my conflicts, like I had too many conflicts, so I couldn't do any more ads. I booked a movie. I auditioned. I booked a lead in like a streaming kind of movie. It was called Future Olympians, which was like a wonderful experience. And then at that point, I kind of felt like I had hit a wall in terms of whatever I was able to do, just in terms of like using like what I knew from improv or sketch, or like I felt like I was good at performing, but not necessarily acting. And then I started I first studied with this great teacher named David Rotenberg, who very sadly just passed away this week. And then also now, of course, with Tom Todoroff, which has been unbelievable. But in doing that, I started, the commercials sort of less so, and more getting into scripted stuff. And all this, which was more challenging, not only because of the work, but also because going from non-union to union, you're obviously, going up against, certainly much stiffer competition. And that's been a really fun process. So over the last couple of years, I've gotten to work mostly like smaller supporting stuff in like Hallmark movies, and a couple of features. I play the Floyd Smith, the coach of the Leafs, in there's a Borja Salming documentary that's coming out soon. And then also like a sports announcer in this, I think it's called Flint Strong. It's going to be it's a biopic of this American boxer. So anyways, all that to say, smaller roles. But again, it's been really, it's been a cool process to sort of start a second career in earnest in my 40s, because, I think when I'm starting in my 20s as a writer, you're so green and ignorant that like I really don't know what I don't know, and just deluded enough to not go looking for what I don't know.
Right.
And I think that the difference from like actually working in show business for the last 10, 15 years and transitioning into this has been like, it's simultaneous. It's been cool that to be able to do this and to do some work, but also like at an age now where it's like the more I try to learn, like it's both really fulfilling, but also I find very daunting, because like I feel like every single class I take, whether it was with David Rotenberg or whether it's with Tom Todorov now, like I'm learning so much, but then I'm also learning like how much I don't know. And that's exhilarating because it's like fun to have new things and try. But it's humbling. It's humbling. I think maybe that's it more than anything, is maybe not daunting. I think it's humbling, because I think with writing, I paid my dues and I got to a place, and I guess I am in a place where I feel very comfortable and like I really understand what I'm doing. And I love acting, and I would like to think that I have a couple of things that I know how to do or that I'm learning how to do, but it really is, it's humbling to start all over again,
Yeah, that's great. So you came into our world, I think, our mutual friend and one of our longtime members, Chris Sandiford. Yeah, Chris Sandiford.
Another Montreal guy, sort of.
Yeah. You known him for a long time?
Montreal via Kingston.
Yeah. You known Chris for a long time, back from Montreal?
So, yeah, you know what? Like, if you want to use, like, comedy scene terms, like, I think he was, like, a grade below me.
Gotcha.
Like, I think I'm probably about, like, 9 years older than Chris. So we were definitely on the scene at the same time, I think, as I was, like, sort of in my more, like, established improv years, where I was sort of starting to mostly just do professionals, like do like JFL or whatever I was up to. But I was still doing improv and sketch before leaving Montreal. And Chris, and he had a very, very funny comedy partner, Montreal comedian named Daniel Karen. And they used to have a show called Ladies and Gentlemen Comedy. And I used to just love watching them perform, like just like such great, funny comedy brains. And Chris, like just super talented. And so I moved to Toronto, and then Chris, I think, moved a couple of years later, and we reconnected again that way and stuff. But, he's been crushing it. The last couple of years, which surprises me zero. But I know that he had mentioned that he was working with you guys and what a difference it had made. And again, as I'm trying to learn another sort of branch of this world, and actually, the actual technique or whatever behind it, Chris is as good an actor as I know in real life. And so if you guys are good enough for him, then, I can only imagine what you could do for a jabroni like me.
So what were you doing for self-tape auditions? For those that don't know, I'm sure most people listening probably do. We know that Actors Audition Club, we help actors shoot their auditions either in the studio or via Zoom, so that you don't have to worry about the tech, you don't have to worry about editing, also so that you have a director and someone to bounce ideas off with you. But what were you doing for your self-tapes before you started doing them with us?
Well, first of all, can I plug you and just say,
please,
that it's great, guys. Like, honestly, I think I've now done about 4 auditions with you guys. And even just from the first time in, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, it's exactly what you're looking for. And it's so much, I find it so much more comfortable, because I think when you're alone doing self-tapes, and I'll get into my like ridiculously amateur self-tape approach afterwards, but I think when you're doing it alone, and like anything, when you want something, no matter how sort of sexually indifferent you try to be, like you're trying, but like you don't really know if it feels right. You only have your eyes to go on, right? You can even roll back and watch it, and that's good. Obviously trust your instinct and stuff, but it is nice to have, sometimes you can get a little too in the forest and you can't really see the trees. So it is nice that way, My self-taping approach or setup before you guys was, true to kind of getting a late start to actually acting, like super amateurish, when I first thought of it as just a side hustle, I would just flip up my laptop camera with whatever lighting I had and just do it that way. And then, I graduated to the ring light and my, phone or whatever, but I was using an app, and I won't say the name of the app because I don't want to besmirch it, but it's an app that you record both parts in a script or all the parts in a scene, and then you flag your role and you speak your role, and then it voice activates the other roles back to you, so you're basically your own reader, which is helpful, I guess. It is helpful in some ways, but you're not really acting off of something, you're just sort of waiting for your cue to talk,
right?
But again, I think that it's my self-tape approach has changed dramatically as I learned more about this. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was really, I think I entered my first couple of years, I really approached acting as like, well, I'm a writer who sometimes acts. And whereas now, I approach it as like, I'm an actor as well as a writer. And these are two parallel careers that may intertwine, but like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it, a full hog, because, I don't think there's anything that charming about, a punk rock, whatever kind of aesthetic. You know what I mean? Like, if it's between you and 500 other people, I don't think anyone's ever going to be like, there's something about that super amateurish lighting and unprofessional angles. I think that's our guy.
Right.
Right. Not all these other people that are like very professionally doing it.
Right. And what's been the difference for you, or what are a couple of the positive changes in coming in here? Things that you don't have to do that you had to do alone, or just the
don't have to edit and upload my scenes, which is unbelievable. Also, like, not having to think of anything other than just performing the scene, right? Like, I'm not checking the lighting. I'm not like, oh, did I hit record? Or you know what I mean? Like, all those things, or to go back to this app, which again, I will not name because I don't want to malign them, but I cannot tell you how many great takes were fucked up because of a glitch in the software. You know what I mean? Like, you're humming, you're dialed in, but like, either it cues the next line up too quickly while you're still talking, or it doesn't cue the line, and that would suck. And then I will say, and maybe this is true of a lot of actors who are parents or just have significant others, the other nice thing of coming in is like, there's never an interruption. You know what I mean? Like, there's been good tapes of, that door will open and it's, Dad, I can't find my shoes, or, honey, are you doing pickup today? Like, it's all those little things or even just the knock at the door. Right. And so it's those things that's just day-to-day living your life, and you can't get mad at people for that. But it's also hugely frustrating when, like, you're just trying to get a take and you're alone and you're looking, you're on top of everything. And on top of all of that, you've got to deal with an interruption, as opposed to, I show up, I see your lovely dog, Luna. She barks at me. We go in, we do things together. You've got feedback that's really helpful. Like, Joey, Lars, the last time we had my audition last week, I came in, and even just something as little as coming in that sort of cop scene of coming in with a file that I'm looking at and sort of beginning the line while I'm reading and sort of looking up in it, which is just like a little touch of to make it sort of more true to life or whatever, but that, like, having the second pair of eyes, because I'm not thinking of that.
Right. Yeah.
Does everybody give as rambly answers as I do on this?
Oh, that was fantastic. That was great. Luna wanted to say hello. Hello, Luna.
Hi, Luna. Oh,
here she is. Yeah. Nice up close and personal. Hello, Luna.
What we have is real.
There we go. Brandon, I know that you've worked with Patrick quite a few times. Do you want to speak to your experience in working with Patrick and how that's been? I know Patrick's I will say, Patrick, you've always got great energy, positive energy. You're always well prepped and ready to rock when you come in here. So it's great vibes working with you.
Yeah. And I would just echo that sentiment. Like, it's always so much fun. We're always coming up with nice bits. And we're always enhancing that scene, making it funnier than it really is. So that's what you got to do.
Joy of collaboration, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that is the word too. And a lot of times, and I've been there myself as an actor, where you want to do it all yourself, or you're doing it all yourself because you want to save money. Sometimes you're doing it all yourself because you want to save time, but that usually does not happen. Usually you end up taking 2 or 3 or 4 times longer than it might if you were doing it professionally. But the biggest thing that you miss out on is two brains are better than one. I mean, it's a big reason why
100%.
I love sketch and I love improv versus stand-up, where stand-up is very lone wolfy, but then you get few brains in and you're riffing off each other, and they got a good idea for you and you got a good idea for them, and you just you get things that you wouldn't get working alone at home. Or sometimes people are doing it with a family member who's untrained and doesn't have a TV, film, or acting background.
Or has notes.
Say that again.
Or has notes.
Or has notes. And then you're like, am I getting an actor note or am I getting a husband note?
Yeah, well, that's right. Or just like, anyways. But you've nailed it. Collaboration. I'm guessing you guys are running out of time, but
no, we're good.
I think collaboration is in all fields is really like where the good stuff comes from. When I was younger, and I don't know if this is a youth thing. I think it might have just been a like personal development thing. But like when I was younger, I was so worried about being recognized for like my contribution to something that it would make me more of a lone wolf, I mean, improv, you can't really be a lone wolf, and that is really great. But, I just think that whether you're writing or whether you're acting, and I've definitely worked on TV shows where writers are maybe loath to help each other because, if I help you, that might cost me a chance, or, and ditto with acting. And I get that mentality, but I do think that every time I've opened myself up to share the glory, share the credit, or open myself up to the idea that maybe someone has an idea that's better than the one I have that will help me, that will work in service of me. I think like the more you can diminish your ego, the better the result's going to be. Like, I think the ego monster just like fucking devours us all for 10 seconds of like really fleeting gratification that somehow like this was all me, as opposed to just being open to whether it's collaboration or input or sharing or and also being open to like if you can help someone else too, just like do it. Like their success, like if you're good, I think this is a David Cross quote or John Ennis also from Mr. Show, but like something of like there's room for everyone who's good. And like maybe that timeline's not what we want it to be always and stuff, but like I would never now withhold if there's something I can do that's going to make someone else's script or performance better, like I want to tell them in the same way that I would want them to tell me. So it's just that it's being open. Nobody does it alone.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
Tom often says, your ego is not your amigo, and your ego will ruin every blessing in your life too. So
it does. It wants to kill us.
Yeah, watch out for that ego. A couple final questions. First of all, Brandon, do you have any other questions for Pat?
Yeah, just going back to writers and future writers. How do you deal with writer's block? What kind of things or tips do you do to get out of a sticky situation?
I forget who said it, but I remember reading, it was this quote that stuck with me forever, that like this writer talking about like it's not so much like that there's any such thing as writer's block so much as that it's just a lack of confidence in your own ideas. Mm-hmm. And I think that might be right, because whenever I feel stuck, it's usually like you're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, it's not so good.
Yeah, you're judging it.
Yeah. And also, I do think that like there's some days where you got it and some days where you just don't, and on the days where you just don't, I think you just got to use your skill set differently, whether it's And sorry, Brandon, maybe I'm not answering the question right, but because like maybe if you're talking about writer's block, like to even get a project off the ground, you know what? I think it's like right when you're feeling stuck, write something to completion, even if it's so bad. Like I would even say, especially if it's so bad, because I think it's like that same voice of doubt, and it can be the ego or whatever, but like just like that thing of I can't do it, or what if I can't do it, or what if I can't do it? It's like it's just to paralyze you into being afraid. So I think if you just like do it, and like what's the worst thing that happens? Is that it sucks, right? But then like nobody knows. Nobody's gonna like tell you can't do comedy anymore. And I guess maybe my last story for you guys would be like maybe the best thing that ever happened to me in comedy, and whether that's for writing or acting, was that, as I told you, I loved comedy growing up, and like Late Night with Conan O'Brien was like a really, really influential show for me. And I remember in 1997, so I'm in grade 11, which in Quebec is the end of high school, I volunteered. I wanted to host the school's talent show. So I did. And I had me and my buddies, and I made it like a true ripoff of Conan O'Brien. Like I had like my desk, I had a sidekick. This was like early days of the internet. So I cribbed a bunch of jokes, Conan's jokes the night before, because they were on NBC's website. We wrote a few bits, like a few The More You Knows and whatever. And we did like a variety show. We had our acts. And the show started with a full dining hall. And there was 300 people in the lunch hall at my school. And by the end of the show, I had bombed so badly that there were only 2 people left in the audience. And it was my girlfriend at the time and her friend who was her ride. And the only reason she stayed that long was so that she could break up with me that night and then keep partying, because it was so humiliating. But the joy of that is, like, I've never eaten shit harder in my life on stage than that. But it's like, when you do that, when you fail, whether it's like a shit audition, a bad script, or whatever, like, you're fine afterwards. And you're not any less funny or talented. And it's just, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think you just got to, like, clear the cobwebs to get rid of the writer's block. And that just means, like, you wrote it. You won. You know what I mean? Like, even if it's the worst, most meandering story in the world, it's like, or sketch or whatever, it's like, you wrote it. You started something and you finished it, and it's done. Doesn't matter if it's good. You did it. And so you beat the writer's block. Because it's like, oh, you can't write. It's like, I can write. I didn't say be any fucking good, but I can do it. And I kind of feel that way sometimes with auditions, where like sometimes I feel, and I think this was more in the like self-tape days, like before I started working with you guys, where like maybe sometimes I just get too in my own head, or like I can't get it. And then you just kind of hit yourself, say to myself, like, fuck it. Like, I'm going to do a take. I'm going to just let it all out. And like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm just not going to hear back. I'm not going to get it, but it's
great advice.
I don't know.
Getting back to the writing advice too, I've heard someone say it like, just all you're doing is writing a shitty first draft, and that's your goal. Is just puke some shit on a page. Or someone else, I think it might have been what's the guy who wrote Newsroom? Prolific
like
writer.
Sorkin?
Yeah, Sorkin said I think it might have been him. He was like, in his rough draft, he's just piling sand into a sandbox that later he's going to make into a sand castle. But this is just the raw material in his first draft. Just throw it there, and then it becomes something later. Is some advice
that's
that
really
I've
true.
heard.
You know what? Yeah. It's almost like city planning. Like it's like, if let's say you're building a city, it's like when you're in the city, you're so close to the buildings that you're making. And all that really matters to start is like, just get all the buildings and the roads in there. And then it's almost like in the second pass, you're almost looking at like a cartographer, and it's like, okay, now I've got an overview of the city. Right. And it's like, oh, right. Like the hospital should go here, and the houses should actually go here, and the parks go here. But it's like, just get it all out. And then afterwards, trust in the little machine you got up there will recognize where to make trims.
Love it. Final question is future aspirations. What is Patrick Dussault looking to do in his career moving forward? Short term, long term. What's next? What do you want to manifest?
Starring and writing in my own projects, both feature and episodic. I mean, the very simple answer is I just want to be able to do make believe for my whole life. But if I get to make a wish, to write and star in my own comedy feature or half-hour comedy.
Beautiful. The Pat Dussault Show.
And always to keep making sketch comedy too. It's the love that'll never go away. But those are different muscles. Yes. But that's what I want to manifest. Writing and starring in my own feature.
Well, it is now out in the podcast world, so the universe will, and so it is. Yeah,
I'm very flattered that you've invited me to come talk to you guys. This was so nice.
This has been great. And a little birdie told me that there's some whispers of potential sketch comedy collaborations between the three of us and
I've heard
others here. So
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
Let's talk more about that on say Friday.
Yeah. Friday sounds like a good day. Yeah.
2 o'clock?
2 o'clock, 2:30? About 2:30. In person or on Zoom?
Oh, definitely in person.
Okay, sounds good. 2:30.
That's where the snugs happen, guys.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank
it's
you,
not
Patrick.
comedy without snugs.
Thank you for joining us today. We love having you, like we said, in Actors Audition Club. We love your big positive energy. And thanks for sharing all your pearls of wisdom too about your writing career and your acting career. I think this has been a great episode and tons of info for anyone who is an actor or a writer. This has been great. So looking forward to more with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Both of you. Appreciate it.
Great. Yeah. So we'll see you Friday at 2:30 here at Laughing Vikings, if not sooner.
Unless I get an audition that I got to cut faster.
Yeah, we'll see you then. Yeah.
Let's hope.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been episode 159 of Inside the Audition. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
I can look at the camera.
What's that? Oh yeah, we're still on camera. Yeah.
Just look at the camera and say goodbye. I'm saying goodbye to you guys in your boxes.
Oh, totally.
I guess I should look this way to make it real.
Yeah, and then walk down your stairs out of frame. Yeah.
I once tried to do an audition as two characters, and I tried to split screen it. I didn't get that part. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Right. I will see you Friday or sooner.
Yes. Patrick
Bye,
Dussault, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Boom.
All right. That's it, folks. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.